This simulation, my preferred word to describe it is actually a dream. In that physical world, there was some sort of interspecies war. The losing parties of that war, of which we were one, were effectively coerced into participating in what we would consider highly unethical medical and other experiments. Part of this greater experiment was putting people into a state of suspended animation or coma, wiring these people's minds together, regulated by a central technological source.
Moksha, the Sanskrit term for final liberation from samsara, the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Intuitive Underground found that we are living in a simulation. But simulation is the only word that is easiest for the public to understand. According to them, this is not a normal digital computer simulation like the Matrix. It's not a simple binary. It's also not merely electronic. A more accurate way to describe it would be this: an induced, shared, and regulated dream. And this dream comes from a kind of interspecies world that we lost in external physical reality, what they describe it as the real world. Hello everyone, I'm Rex. Welcome back. Before we go deeper, we need to introduce the team behind this claim. Intuitive Underground. Intuitive Underground is an independent research group centered around remote viewing. According to members such as Dan Mann and Morgan Farrell, the team began working together around 2012. They primarily use structured methods such as technical remote viewing, also known as TRV, and the control remote viewing, or CRV, to explore subjects such as location, events, history, human origins, death, consciousness, and the structures of reality. Their basic methods works like this. A project manager sets a target in advance and assigns it a random target number. The viewer does not know what the target is. In that blind condition, the viewer records the first images, sensations, structures, emotions, and conceptual impressions that appear. Later, those impressions are compared with the actual targets. The team believes that this blind process can reduce subjective imagination and later mental filling in. What made Intuitive Underground more widely discussed was not their work on ordinary locations or objects, but their later Canon projects. That project attempts to explore highly controversial questions such as the origin of humanity and modern civilization, what consciousness may experience after death, reincarnation and the turn of light, whether there may be perceptual interference between the moon and Earth, whether the reality we experience has the nature of a shared dream or a mirrored reality. So let's return to the beginning of the film. They claim that beyond our current reality, there exists a more real physical world that in their descriptions resembles this one, with natural environments, but a smaller population. They have not fully pieced together the full picture of the world. According to their remote viewing, we were the defeated sides that were forced to participate in a highly unethical medical and other experiments. Morgan described these experiments more specifically. Individuals were placed inside containers filled with liquid. Their state resembled suspended animations or coma. Their minds were connected, and that connections and dream states were regulated by a central technological source. As a result, multiple beings enter a controlled, shared dream together. Daniel described the external world facility they saw roughly as an ancient, metallithic, large-scale stone structure, not like an ordinary castle. The upper levels may have had other uses or activities. The key experimental or suspended animation facilities may have been underground, in areas similar to catacombs or underground passages. The roof seems to contain some kind of a transmitting or projection device. Coincidentally, remote viewer Brett Stewart of Technical Intuition has made a similar claim. He says we may be living a shared dreams created by connected minds. In his account, our real bodies are asleep in suspended animation chambers, inside an immense underground facility, miles of aisles stretching, operated by an advanced technological center. He also claims that a magnetic field can capture souls and draw them back into reincarnation. His findings resemble those of Intuitive Underground.
From the work that I've done it doesn't seem to be that reincarnating in the same place again and again and again without memory of previous reincarnations or previous lives is normal in the known universe. But that's something that's very not normal. It's something that actually keeps you from progressing. Because if you think about it, how are you supposed to learn a lesson or have a greater understanding if that whole previous life is completely unavailable to you? So it seems like a very poor system. It's designed to keep people here, because keeping people here, souls here, feeds into a much larger system, and it powers that system.
But we need to know that Intuitive Underground itself acknowledges that many of its projects provide fragments of information, not a complete or independently verifiable map of the universe. And there is nothing to fear, and there are always solutions. We will come back to that later from the perspective of ancient teachings. Robert Monroe was a consciousness explorer and the founder of the Monroe Institute. He began experiencing simultaneous out-of-body experience in the 1950s and spent decades expanding consciousness beyond the physical body and ordinary linear time. His best-known books include Journeys Out of the Body, Far Journeys, Ultimate Journey. The word Loosh comes from Monroe's 1985 book Far Journeys. Although Monroe did not write this section as a provable scientific finding, he recorded a narrative that came from a non-physical experience. In his story, Monroe described the world called the garden, designed to produce something called Loosh. In the early part of the narrative, Loosh is described as a product generated by life processes, conflicts, death, and emotional activity. He specifically describes that conflicts between living beings can produce a high purity of Loosh. Competition, fear, pain, survival struggle, and death are all connected to Loosh. But human beings do not produce it only through fear. Monroe also places love, loneliness, family bonds, friendship, guilt, ambition, greed, illness, nations, war, and religions inside the same Loosh narrative. This is the point most often misunderstood online. Monroe did not simply say that narrative emotions are most variable kind of Loosh. In his later reflections, he described the Loosh more broadly as a kind of energy generated by organic life, with human emotional activity playing a major role. He even asked whether the highest emotions might be love. Later, the internet simplified Loosh into fear is being harvested. But Monroe's original text is more complex, and in some ways more disturbing. He seems to be asking, why do the deepest human love, the deepest loneliness, and the deepest pain, and the strongest desire all appear to produce something that may be used by a larger system? But the problem is not whether we are living in a simulation or not. The problem is, can we choose consciously and freely when we die?
A net has been placed essentially around this reality that we're living in right now. When you die is the rotational lensing for your light or your soul, where it bends you back. System is in place. It lenses you, curves your light back, and you come right back. You come back again and again and again and again. The drawings in the remote viewing data showed a very large cage with a whole bunch of plethora of people, many minds essentially trapped in this cycle again and again and again and again. That process feeds into a much larger system, that it's energetically being fed back up a chain, a supply chain, to somewhere way, way off in the distance, whether that's in the universe or dimensions, I couldn't tell you.
Here's where we need to look into the ancient traditions and teachings. Death is not the end, but the beginning of the Bardo. In traditional Tibetan Buddhism, death, the transitional state after death, and the next birth are understood as a continuous process. The Bardo is not exactly a place. It's more like a transitional state in which consciousness has left its old identity but has not yet entered a new one. Tibetan tradition often uses 49 days to describe the Bardo process. But the main point is not the exact numbers of the days. The real point is whether consciousness can remain clear during the transition. The second opportunity is to face the peaceful and wrathful deities. In the Tibetan Book of the Dead, there may appear peaceful deities, wrathful deities, terrifying visions, sound, light, judgment-light experiences, attraction, and repulsion. Modern viewers may easily interpret this as meaning that countless entities literally come to meet you after death. But the traditional tantric understanding is not only an external entity theory. Many interpretations emphasize that these appearances are closely connected with one's own mind, habits, karma, and unintegrated emotions. The third opportunity is to see how attachment drives rebirth. In the Tibetan Buddhist framework, the main force behind reincarnation is not that some beings forces you to come back. It is ignorance, clinging to a fixed self, craving, fear, anger, unfinished desire, karmic habits. According to Tibetan Buddhist analysis, afflictions and attachments activate karma, and this pushes consciousness into another state of rebirth. So the real reincarnation trap is not an external prison. It is the belief that you must grab something, possess someone, escape something, or prove something to be complete. This can be broken down into 5 practical paths. First, awareness. Seeing thoughts without becoming them. Practice seeing fear, jealousy, desire, shame, and anger as they arrive each day. Do not suppress them. Instead say, at this moment, anger is appearing. Do not say, I am anger or I am angry. Second, detachment. Here, I want to bring in a story about Peter, a Hungarian Tibetan Dzogchen master and Zen master. I had the fortune of knowing Peter 10 years ago. Before that, he practiced in Tibet for 10 years at altitudes of several thousand meters in a harsh environment. He has been recognized as a reincarnated Lama from a previous life, and in this life, he returned to Tibet to continue his practice and complete his Dzogchen journey. He's an exceptionally uncommon master, always smiling with joy, and his observation and insights are very sharp and full of wisdom. I once met him at a funeral. After the funeral, I asked him, when people face this kind of grief, when they lose someone they deeply love, they suffer greatly. How should we deal with that? I feel overwhelmed to even imagine it. He looks at me and smiles as always, and answers with only 2 words in Chinese, 不住, which is pretty Zen, by the way. In English, the closest word is detachment. I immediately understood what he meant, but I did not ask him how actually to do so. Fortunately, in the following years of study and practice with different teachers and masters, I gradually came to understand more deeply. Detachment does not mean not loving, not trying, or not enjoying life. It means I can love you, but I do not make you the condition of my existence. I can pursue success, but I do not make success the definition of who I am. I can experience pain, but I do not make pain my entire identity. You can be unconditionally happy in whatever circumstance. The other intriguing thing is that Peter loved video gaming. I often saw him play the Elder Scrolls on his gaming laptop. So I asked him why. He said, gaming can provide you with an experience that you could never have in this life. And unlike other players, he never attached to it. Third, contemplation of impermanence. Remind yourself every day. Relationships can change. The body will change. Wealth will change. Reputation will change. Emotions will change. Roles will change. This is not pessimism. This is the roots of reducing fear. Fourth, compassion and wholesome action. If you only pursue the question, how can I escape reincarnation? It may still be a more refined form of self-attachment. The Tibetan Buddhist path is not only about personal escape, it also emphasizes compassion. Bodhicitta means the awakened heart, and the reduction of suffering for sentient beings. Fifth, formal and serious practice. If you are especially interested in Tibetan esoteric methods, you should not learn them independently from a YouTube video. It is better to find a qualified teacher, lineage, empowerment, or long-term training. Here are some practical exercises that can help cultivate those qualities the Tibetan Dzogchen master pointed to. 1. Daily meditation. Train yourself to see thoughts rather than be driven by them. When you can see a thought, you are already halfway there. At that moment, you are the observer of the thought, not the one being controlled by it. Meditation also resets your nervous system, helping you make better choices and create a different future. By the way, we built an app called Conscious Hearts that offers free carbon coherence breathing and deep meditations to help you train your mind. Check the link below if you are interested. Second, body awareness. Pay attention to breathing, heartbeat, tension, and impulse. Connect with your body. Feel the most subtle reactions in the body. Love your body. Third, emotional recognition. Identify recurring fear, attachment, guilt, and desire for control. When you can recall your real feelings through emotional journaling, you can begin to recognize these patterns and identify the triggers behind them. This is helpful for freeing yourself from emotional reactivity and the nervous system's automatic fight-or-flight patterns. When you can write them down, you are strengthening your awareness of the patterns. By the way, you can also use conscious heart to help identify triggered emotional fluctuations with greater precision and track your progress. Fourth, death contemplation. As Buddhist teaches, everything is transient, like clouds and smoke. Everything will eventually pass. When you came here, you came with your gift. When you leave, when you take with you is the wisdom distilled from experience. And at the same time, we can enjoy it fully in the present moments. Fifth, compassion and service. Shift from what do I want to gain to how can I create less suffering. When your life blueprint moves from the individual self toward a higher level of consciousness, you will naturally want to serve others, create value, and leave the world better than you found it. This may be one of the natural paths of the soul evolution toward the source. Perhaps the remote viewers were right. Perhaps Monroe saw the real structure of the universe. Perhaps the Tibetan Book of the Dead describes the deepest psychological map of consciousness. But both point toward the same thing. When fear arises, do not lose yourself. When desire arises, do not treat it as a command. When the world gives you an identity, do not forget that you are way bigger than that. You are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your identity. You are the experiencer, the observer, and the creator. And when you can master your awareness, you begin to master your freedom.